So we'll discuss a little bit about the topic of Mechikas Hashem, the biblical prohibition of destroying God's name. As we read about a little bit yesterday in the May Sota, in the waters of the Sota, a woman suspected of adultery. So part of the process, the procedure, the end game is she drinks from this waters of the Sota, and the part of that process is destroying God's name. So there's a Gemara in Sukkah with David HaMelech, where David was threatened by a flood. Apparently not a flood as big as the Dor HaMabul, because God said he's not going to do that anymore. So there was a flood that was going to destroy many people. Who knows, hundreds, thousands of people, I don't know the numbers. And he has a tradition, David, that by throwing in the Shem Hashem, throwing in the name of God into the waters, he could stop the tidal wave. He could stop the waters from coming. However, that's a biblical prohibition to destroy God's name. So he was in doubt what to do. What to do? On one hand, I want to save all the people. On the other hand, it's a biblical prohibition. So he said to anyone who knows the answer, please help me. Please tell me the answer. So one of his advisors, Achitophel, said, I think I know the answer. If we have a halacha that is to save one marriage, to save that one husband and one wife are allowed to destroy God's name, how much more so to save many people we're allowed to? David liked that answer, and he threw the name of God in, and it worked so well, the waters went down under the subterranean waters. They really stopped everything, and that's where he's saying Shir HaMalos, to bring the waters back up to normal. But we see, so that's the Gemara with David. There's a couple of questions on that Gemara. Number one is, why was David asking Achitophel? Should everyone know the answer? It's obvious that we know for the big three, for 3 commandments, you have to give up your life. Not to commit avodah zarah, idol worship, adultery, or murder. But save the big 3, we have a mitzvah v'chai behem. So what do you mean David had to ask an advisor? If I asked you guys, okay, maybe not that much, but if I asked someone, no, if I ask the average person, they know that it's only the big 3 that you have to give up your life for, and not for the other things. So what was David's question? So maybe we'll come back to that. And secondly, there's another principle in halacha. It's called grama. Grama is something which happens indirectly. And it's something called gram mechika. You could destroy God's name through an indirect means. So what was David concerned anyway? We have a Gemara in Shabbos. The Gemara talks about someone who has a tattoo. I guess it wasn't the same type of tattoos we have today, and clearly not the same thing that's being written on them. This is the case where someone tattooed the Shem Hashem, had the name of God on his arm, wherever it was.
I've seen that.
And what happened was, he went to the mikvah, or he had to go to the mikvah. So the shaila was, can he go to the mikvah? Because if he goes to the mikvah, the name of God is going to be destroyed. Would that be a violation of Mechikas Hashem? So the discussion in the Gemara, so the way we follow is that you can't go in with the water and sitting there rubbing it off. That's Mechikas Hashem biyadayev. That's considered actively doing it. That's a prohibition. But if the water dissolves it by itself, that's called gra mechika. That's called indirectly doing it. And the Torah only prohibits if it's Mechikas Hashem. Gra mechika is mutter. So the question is on David, so throwing the Shem Hashem in the water and saving the flood, that's only gra mechika. So what was his shaila to begin? What was his question? You're allowed to indirectly have God's name, so you just can't do it directly. That's because Chuvas Harashba on the Gemara there, it gets into what is the fine line between actively destroying God's name and doing gram mechika. What are the definitions of what's considered indirect, what's considered direct. So the Rashba goes into the whole discussion on it, but the point he makes is we have, similar to a principle we have in Hilchos Shabbos. There's a principle in Shabbos that we know in order to violate Shabbos in the biblical level, you have to do it the way it was done in the Mishkan. And we know one of the rules of Hilchos Shabbos is it has to be a davar hamischavin. You have to have intent to do it. If it happens through when you're not having kavanah indirectly b'shog, it's a different rule. So there's a principle of, let's say, the Gemara's case is you're outside, you have a chair, and you want to move the chair either in the sun, out of the sun, away from the bugs, near the bugs, whatever the case may be. And by dragging the chair, you might pull out dirt and stuff in the grass, which could be in violation of a biblical prohibition. So Gemara says it depends on how heavy the chair is. If it's definitely going to happen, so then it's usur. But if it may or may not happen, so therefore we assume it's not something you have kavanah for. You don't care about the holes in the ground. You just want to move the chair, so it's permitted. So a davar she'eino mischaven is permitted on Shabbos. However, something that's definitely going to happen, that's considered a psik ratio. A psik ratio, what it means to cut off the head. The example the Gemara gives is that you're looking for a toy for your kid to play with. You're short on toys. You say, let me cut off the head of the animal, and then I'll give him the head to play with. So basically, obviously you can't do that because you can't kill the animal, and obviously, but I'm just interested in cutting off the head. But
was it a regular weekday toy? Heads of animals.
So you heard Barbie starting that line soon, but we'll get to it. But the point being is, so classical case would be, let's say, when you open your fridge or your door, the light goes on. That'd be so. You have an incandescent light bulb inside, so that'd be a problem. So therefore, most people shut off, take the lights out. They leave the lights off in the fridge because by opening your fridge door, the lights. So that'd be an example of psik ratio. So Rashba says the definition of mechika is not even, you don't have to sit there rubbing it. If you know it's definitely going to happen, if the result, by me putting this into the water and I know the name of Hashem is going to be destroyed, that's considered mechika mamish. That's not considered gram mechika. He'll learn the Gemara in Shabbos, or reinterpret it a little differently, and therefore he says it was a problem. So how could David go ahead and destroy God's name? Because by throwing it in the water, even though he's not sitting there erasing the letters, if he knows that God's name is going to be destroyed, isn't that a biblical violation of Mechikas Hashem? In fact, there's a famous tshuva, the Dovei Meisharim. He was one of the Gedolim who lived in the New York area, probably. He died in the early 60s, so I guess he lived there 50s, 40s, 60s, I'm not sure when he moved. So either way, he has a famous tshuva he was asked, and let's say there was, and I'll just make it more of a 21st century shiloh, but it was the same shiloh, that basically, that let's say someone goes into the hospital, into the infectious disease section, that basically the person has an infectious disease, i.e., was an outbreak, is that what it's called? The movie with Dustin Hoffman, Renee Ruth. I don't think anyone put tefillin on in that movie, but the case is that he was in the infectious disease department, and obviously it's the morning he wanted to daven and put on his tefillin. And they would have let him. The only issue was, when he was going to get out, the rule was anything that touched your body, any clothes and tefillin, they're going to incinerate it. So Shiloh was, is he allowed to put on tefillin now, knowing whether it's going to be tomorrow or next week, that they're going to have to burn the tefillin, because everything's got to go. Government rules. So that was his question. Should he not put on the tefillin, or is he allowed to put on the tefillin, and it's not my problem what happens in 2 weeks from now. So first he wants to say it's dependent on the machlokas, the Ramban Baal Amor. The Ramban Baal Amor are similar machlokas regarding Milah. That we know Milah is done on the 8th day, and Milah is Docha, Shabbos. Even if the day 8 Milah, we do everything. However, only the meal itself is docha Shabbos, but the preparations have to be done before. And back in the day, they used to heat up hot water. That was part of a health issue for the child. So the question is, so if you did the meal already and the water got spilled, there's something to talk about. Everyone agrees you go ahead and either a guy or you heat up hot water. What happens if you didn't do the meal yet, and you know that after you do the circumcision, either you forgot, the water spilled, you don't have the hot water necessary for the sake of the child. So what do you do? So the Ramban writes, Ein lecha mitzvah elo l'shayta. The Ramban writes, the Torah tells us we have a mitzvah of bris milah on day 8. Let the chips fall where they may. That's it. Day 8, and if I have to machal Shabbos, okay, I'm allowed to. It's hakanas nafashas. The child's in danger. And the Baal HaMor says no. Ezu achacham haroes hanolad. Who's the wise person? You have to look into the future. So here it's not a future where 3 weeks from now, I know in the next 10 seconds I'm going to have to do it. So the Baal HaMor says, better to wait until Sunday. We don't use hot water today, but in Shulchan Aruch they pass on like the Baal HaMor, that better not to do it. So the question is that similar to our case? According to, if we equate the case according to the Ramban, then put on the tefillin, and if it has to be burnt by someone else, it's not your issue. I don't have to make cheshbonos on whether I do the mitzvah of tefillin or not. And the Baal HaMor says, yes, sometimes you do have to. If you know it's going to happen, then maybe. So he says first he thinks it's dependent on the Ramban Baal HaMor, then he throws in another Gemara. The Gemara in another Gemara in Shabbos, the 19th parak in Mila actually, with Elisha Baal Kanafayim, the famous story in the Gemara with Elisha, not the Nabi Elisha, one of the rabbis, and it was during a case of Shas Hashmad. We know for the big 3 normally you have to give up your life, but during the time of religious persecution, even on a mitzvah kala, sometimes even on a simple mitzvah, and in fact the Gemara gives an example, sometimes even if changing your shoelaces, if that's some connection to Avodah Zarah, switching from black to red, etc. So the halacha is that during Shas Hashmad, even on a mitzvah kala, so the Gemara has the case, it was during Shas Hashmad, I guess they weren't letting you wear tefillin, and Elisha we went ahead and he wore the tefillin anyway, but one of the soldiers, a Roman soldier, one of the soldiers saw him and he started running away. And he ran down the block, ran down the alley, until he had nowhere to go, so he quickly took off his tefillin and put it in his hand. So the soldier said, well, what are you doing? What do you have in your hand? He said, no, nothing. Why? What are you thinking? They said, it looked like you had tefillin in your hand, and he says, no. So he opened up his hand, and it was like a bird, type of bird. So the question, so that's the Gemara. So some ask, but so it was Shas Hashmad, why didn't he give up his life for it? It's a mitzvah kala, even tefillin, so why wasn't he willing to give up his life to do the mitzvah of tefillin? So some point out, depending how you learn the Gemara, different machlokas, Rashi, Tosas, exactly who was weak, who was weak in the mitzvah of tefillin. Was it that no one was ready to accept him, etc.? So they point out that maybe it's something you do have to give up your life for, but the reason why he didn't is because he knew what would happen to the tefillin. That if he showed him the tefillin, he knew it'd get incinerated, be destroyed. So maybe to avoid having the tefillin destroyed, so therefore that's why he did it. So that's what so the Dove Misharim's conclusion is that he says better not to wear the tefillin because we know it's going to be again. We have to get into the details whether the guy is going to be in the hospital or in this room 1 week or maybe the next 20 years. So that could be a difference also for how long. Because in that case he's wearing the tefillin and then he'd get it back. He'd continue wearing it the next day. If this person cannot wear tefillin again for that or another mitzvah, so maybe maybe the halacha would be different. So that's that's what we're saying. So according to David, it wasn't gram mechika, it was mechika mamish, and therefore that's why he wasn't. That's why he had the shaila. It is considered mechika, and he spoke to Achitofel to do it. But the question is, it's pikuach nefesh. So what's the shaila? Like, of course, destroy God's name. If to save one marriage, he's willing to destroy his name. So how much more so there? See, that's not so simple either, because there's a famous Chuvas Harama that has a different shaila about, let's say someone got into a fight with his wife, a machokes, and when you're upset, you're angry, you say things you don't really mean, and he said, I want to divorce my wife. He took a neder, he's going to divorce his wife. And then, he cooled down a couple of moments later, or the next day, and he said, of course I don't want to divorce my wife, but Shiloh, he took a neder. So now, and he said, so the Shiloh he asked to Ramah was, I noticed the halacha in Shulchan Aruch is by Mei Sota, that we know you're allowed to violate the biblical prohibition of destroying God's name to save a marriage, so maybe here also, so then maybe I should violate the neder, which is also biblical prohibition to save the marriage. So the Teshuvas Ramah answers, no, that's not the pshat in the Gemara. It's not pshat when you're not violating mechikas Hashem when you do meisota. The Torah sets up the prohibition is osasun kein Hashem Elokechem. The Torah puts it in the negative. You debase avodah zarah. When it comes to God's name, you have to treat properly. So the whole issue of destroying God's name is in a negative fashion. But if you're doing it in a constructive fashion, it's not that I'm violating a biblical prohibition and it's a heter. You never violated the issue. So when I destroy God's name to save a marriage, there is no issue. So therefore, he has to come on to a different issue in terms of the neder. But we'll have to continue next time in terms of what about the pikuach nefesh issue? In terms of what was the shiloh to begin with? Like, wouldn't he know he should be saving lives?